Joining us now, John Heilemann, National Affairs Analyst for NBC News and MSNBC. Mieke Eoyang, former House Intelligence Committee staff member and Vice President for the National Security Program at the Third Way. And Jim Cavanaugh, MSNBC law enforcement analyst and retired ATF special agent. He has participated in executing several federal search warrants and worked with Robert Mueller when Robert Mueller was the director of the FBI. And so, Jim Cavanaugh, I want to go straight to you on the nature of this kind of raid. People are calling it pre-dawn. We don't know what that is. Is that 3 a.m.? Is that 4 a.m.? It's certainly, in the FBI's judgment, before anyone in the Paul Manafort household would be awake. Tell us what that kind of raid is like when you're inside the home. What do you hear? Does the doorbell ring? Is the door just knocked in? What happens in that home?
Right, Lawrence. Well, most likely it's a 6 a.m. raid. The Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure only allow search warrants to be served, or forbid search warrants to be served between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. It's extremely unusual in the Federal Service to get a warrant before 6 a.m. or in the night. We only got them on very violent offenders, and we have to convince the judge there's a reason. Now, what happens on a case like this? Once it's 6 a.m., the warrant can be served. It's a white-collar case. There's no real danger of violence, but you have certain procedures. But it's a knock and announce. You bang loudly on the door. It's not a tactical team, agents in suits and ties. You bang loudly on the door, and you must announce your authority and purpose. Bang, 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 FBI with a search warrant. Bang, 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 FBI with a search warrant. Usually we would have a marked radio car out front. If the occupants looked outside, they would see it's a police vehicle. Agents may have jackets that say FBI, some in coat and tie with their badge out. If someone in the home opens the door, Lawrence, they're going to go in like they're flooding in on a fast break at the basketball game. They're going in really fast. And that's how they might have got to Mr. Manafort's bedroom door. If some other occupant responded to the knock and opened the door, they would then flood in. They just flood in and sweep all those rooms upstairs. They're looking for the occupants, and the house is now under the custody of the court. That search warrant is issued by a judge, and during the pendency of that, the agents occupy it and the court controls it until they find the items that they particularly described in the warrant. And as you correctly said, there must be an offense lined in the federal search warrant. A particular criminal offense has to be outlined, or usually multiple ones, and then you have to particularly describe the items to be seized. Now, the words probable cause come from the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment. No warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. I mean, we knew the Fourth Amendment by heart in the Federal Service. We lived it every day, and we could recite it word for word. And that's what happened. They had a criminal violation, particular things they were searching for. They knocked and announced. My guess is 6 a.m. It'd be highly unusual if this is before 6 a.m. That would be extremely unusual.
And Jim,
and then they would go in there.
In a white-collar situation like this, how, in your experience, how quickly does the suspect in that home pick up the phone and call the lawyer?
Yeah, in the white-collar case is quick. Probably when the agents are present, he's calling his attorney, and then we often would be on the phone with the attorney ourselves. They would talk to the agent in charge. Listen, you know, we know you got a warrant. We're going to cooperate. They have no choice but to cooperate. They can't obstruct you. I mean, we'd arrest them if they did, so they're going to cooperate. Lawyers know how this works. They're going to fight that in a suppression hearing in the court.
Mieke Eoyang, there's this question of sequence where Paul Manafort had just met with committee staffers the day before, and then bang, there's the raid at dawn the next day. What do you make of that?
So we don't know for sure how long the FBI had been planning this raid, but you have to remember when Paul Manafort appeared before the Senate Intelligence Committee, that was the first time he's appearing before a government agency where he's going to give testimony that's going to be part of the public record. So if he's concerned about his personal legal liability, he may have done something like hit the right, or taking the Fifth. And that would have said to the law enforcement agents and the committee, he's not really a cooperating witness. He's not going to tell you fully what he's been about. He may assert the fifth again when it comes to producing documents, and that may have tipped the FBI over the edge to saying, if he's not going to give it to us voluntarily, we're going to go get it.
John Heilemann, the politics of what is now probable cause day. This is the day where the story publicly enters the zone of probable cause. You have Republican senators trying to figure out their relationship to this president, their distance from this president, Republican House members. What does this do to the politics of this story?
It makes it a lot uglier for Donald Trump and all the people around him. I just want to say, having been the subject of a fair number of pre-dawn raids myself, it is no fun. It's worse than Jim Cavanaugh said. I just got to say, I don't want to go into details, but it's not pretty. Look, I've said from the very beginning of this entire thing that one of the big fallacies about how people understand Bob Mueller has been that this is an investigation, that there's an investigation going on here about collusion or about obstruction of justice. No. Robert Mueller's a prosecutor. He's the prosecutor's prosecutor, and what prosecutors do is make cases. And what Robert Mueller is doing right now is turning up the crank on what's necessary to make a case. There are two guys who could be the prime people who can flip on Donald Trump, on the Trump family. Paul Manafort and Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn's already said he wants to flip.
Yes.
Paul Manafort's another guy who is a prime flippable witness for someone above him. And I think that if you look at the team that Mueller's put together, you look at the way that this investigation is going, they are moving full steam ahead, and they are looking to put equal amounts of pressure on those two guys to get one or both of them to flip as soon as possible. This move is extraordinary on a variety of levels, but that is what it signals to me. We are now moving into the next phase, which is we see what the case is. We're now going to try to go in and lock this case down, and they're moving faster than I think anybody thought they would move.
Yeah, and Mieke, what we see now is that there was a pre-existing investigation of Manafort himself that Mueller has taken over, and the range of possible investigative avenues with Manafort are enormous, including this possibility of laundering cash through the purchase of New York City apartments. It's just a wide-ranging set of possibilities with him, and in this kind of investigation with somebody who's been living in these arenas for this long, for decades, it seems the likelihood of a federal investigation making him uncomfortable to the point where he might want to help them out with some kind of other information to go in another direction. This seems like he's a strong candidate for that.
That's right. Paul Manafort has spent his entire career dealing with shady characters.
Yeah.
He dealt with Sani Abacha in Nigeria. He dealt with Yanukovych's party in Ukraine. A lot of places where a lot of money has disappeared. There's this case for potential fraud in New York. Manafort's got a lot of legal liability and a lot of exposure that the FBI could use to put pressure on him. And so it makes you wonder, for Donald Trump, why hire a guy like this who's got so many vulnerabilities and he could flip on you. So I think it's a real problem, and Mueller's got a lot of evidence that he can look at and a lot of potential cases to make.
Jim Cavanaugh, what does it tell you about the techniques that we can expect to see in this investigation going forward?
Lots of subpoenas. You know, when the grand jury was impaneled, particularly on this Russian probe a few weeks back, that's when I said, oh, this thing's really going to start moving now. Because when you have a grand jury particularly focused on a case, on a group of people, on a certain, what they believe is a criminal conspiracy, maybe to obstruct or launder money or tax evasion, that thing really has the power now of the courts, the subpoena power, the power to issue target letters, subpoena witnesses, grab documents. Of course, they can always get search warrants like they did. And no doubt Director Mueller, and you know, I've just been acquainted with him when we were both in the federal service, and I have the highest regard for him. He is a top guy, honest man. He's going to do the right thing all the time. But I'm telling you, he's smart. He'll bring in the financial IRS investigators. Nobody's better than them on the money. If there's any money shenanigans, those guys will dig it out.
Quickly before we break, John Heilemann, Trump versus Manafort today. National Enquirer comes out with a slam on Paul Manafort. That strikes me as the same thing as a Trump tweet.
I think that's probably right. I think you made the point earlier. There could be counterproductive because why do you want Manafort to be alienated from you and potentially want to flip? I will just say this: we've never seen anything like this before. You asked before about the politics of it. If you're sitting in the White House right now, Washington's seen a lot of special prosecutors, a lot of special independent counsels. Yeah. Never in the Reagan era, in the Bush era, in the Clinton era, we've never seen dawn raids with search warrants never before. And so if you're in the White House where there's already a lot of pressure and everybody now has started to lawyer up or is already lawyered up, this again, in terms of the political pressure on those people in that building, extraordinarily greater.
And Robert Mueller surely knows that he's the first special prosecutor to authorize a raid like this, that he surely knows that in the precedents it's never been needed before now. This is a big, big development. We're going to take a break here. Jim Cavanaugh, thank you very much for joining us with those details about how these raids work. Very, very important. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.